Let's take a look at user input in Python. So here I am in my Python Anywhere environment, and as you can see, I am asking for user input, and I'm telling you here that you need to set user input function and the question you want to ask equal to a variable. So in line 4, my variable is called username, and I am setting that equal to the input for what is your name. So you'll notice around my question that I'm asking, I have parentheses and quotation marks because this is a string. And when I run it, down below you'll see that it prints out what is your name. So I don't have to also do a print function. I can just say input what is your name. I am going to answer the question. And the next line of code, line 5, print username. Let's see what happens. It prints Mrs. Frost. So it takes whatever I input for username, replaces username with that, and so that is what we see when it gets printed out. The next point here says user input is always accepted as a string by default. So let's take a look. If I said my age is 30 and user age is equal to the input, what is your age? And then I say combined age is equal to the user age plus my age. So it should be whatever the user types in plus 30. And then I say print that combined age. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay, as you can see, oops, I'm getting an error. It says missing parentheses in call to print, and I can see this X here tells me there's a syntax error. So I forgot to put parentheses around my print. So let me run it one more time. It's asking me again, what is my name? Oops, I typed it wrong. It's asking me what is my age, so I will say 20. So I should get 30 plus 20 equals 50. And it says line 12 right here, combined age must be str, not int. So I have these commands here, str and int. Str is short for string. And we know that by default, user input is always accepted as a string. But I can't add strings together. It's like saying add 4 plus apple. You just can't do that. So instead, I need to make my user input an integer so that it's accepted as a number. So before int, I can say int input. Now because I have two parentheses, I have one here and one here. Both are opening. I need to make sure I close with two parentheses. So now I'm going to take that user input of whatever they type in and turn it into a number and then try to add that plus my age. So let's, I'm going to comment these out so we don't have to run through my name each time. And let's hit run and see what happens. So I'll say my age is 20 and it prints out 50. Okay. So we just did the converting the user input to an integer. The last thing I want to look at is converting user input to a float. So I'm going to copy all of this code down here. I'm going to comment all of this out again so we don't have to run that every time. And I want you to see what happens when I put in a decimal point. So if I say I'm 20 and a half years old, let's see what happens. Okay, we have an invalid literal for int with base 10 at 20.5, and we see that it's in line 20. So I'm going to go back up here, and because I have now put in a number with a decimal number, or not a whole number, it is no longer an integer. In Python, we call that a floating point number, and so we reference that with float. So by putting float in front, I'm now converting the user input into a float. And let's see if it works. It's taking a minute. Let me save this and try to run it again. see what's happening. Okay, so now if I say my age is 20.5, it totals up 50.5. So now it can work with the decimal points. So again, just to repeat, user input is always accepted by default as a string. So you shouldn't ever really have to write str before your input because that is the default. But you want to use int for whole numbers and you want to use float for numbers with a decimal point.